What's up guys, I'm Juice, and today I want to talk to you about a new take on the underquilt for hammocks. Now if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button below for more upcoming gear videos and outdoor adventures. So let's start off with what actually is an underquilt. In a hammock, there's really nothing insulating you from the air beneath you. So in temperatures, let's just say 75 degrees and below, you need some sort of insulation under you to keep you warm. This typically comes in the form of a sleeping pad or an underquilt. An underquilt is an insulated quilt designed to hang underneath your hammock to prevent heat loss. Traditional underquilts have a shock cord suspension that attaches on either end of the hammock, typically using some sort of carabiner. Underquilts are a fantastic way to stay warm and comfortable off the ground. Underneath my hammock right now is Enlightened Equipment's new Uprising Underquilt. Now in full disclosure, Enlightened Equipment did reach out to me last year to ask if I'd like to test this quilt. So they sent me the quilt for free. I got a chance to test it, give my opinion, and then after the testing period, I was able to keep the quilt. So now that it's officially out on Enlightened Equipment's website, let's talk about my experience with it. When the quilt arrived, I quickly realized that they were attempting to do something that had been rolling around in the back of my mind for a while, which was to try and make the underquilt fit better under the hammock. Anyone who has used an underquilt is probably aware of the cold butt syndrome, which is when a cold air pocket is created underneath you due to the quilt either not being properly secured and tightened underneath, or has moved from its original position, causing a gap. Due to the nature of traditional underquilts being secured at either end, this is a pretty common occurrence. Enter in Enlightened Equipment's Uprising Underquilt, which attempts to tackle cold butt syndrome by reimagining the underquilt. Notice the Uprising quilt has extra suspension points at the foot and head ends of the quilt. These additional suspension points allow you to dial in your quilt more and get that secure and snug fit to drastically decrease cold butt syndrome and keep you warm all night long. Some other unique features of the quilt are that it has shaped vertical baffles which taper towards the foot end, which creates an insulated shelf for your feet that works with the diagonal lay you want in a hammock. There are optional draft collars on either end to keep the cold out, and the foot end of the quilt is actually half stuffed to save on weight. Less insulation under your feet may sound like a downside, but in temperatures 50 plus, you don't need a ton under your feet to keep you warm. In my experience, the coldest temperatures I slept in was down to about 45 degrees, and I had zero issues with my feet getting cold in my 40-degree quilt. This is a custom, made-to-order quilt, so there are a ton of options to choose from. You get to choose the type of down at 850 or 950 fill, the temperature rating from -10 Fahrenheit all the way up to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, the length of the quilt in a short 3/4 length or the full length, which is the one that I chose. You can add an optional draft collar, as well as choose the fabric and color to make this quilt exactly the way you want it. Mine comes in at 12.57 ounces on my scale for the 40-degree full-length Uprising, with the 10D inner and 10D outer material. Since mine is a prototype, the production model may differ slightly. Now, if you're interested in checking out Enlightened Equipment's new Uprising Underquilt, check out the link in the description below. The first pro of the Uprising Underquilt over a traditional underquilt is that there's a lot less movement of the quilt due to the additional suspension points keeping the quilt in place. The second pro of this quilt is that it has a better fit. You get a more snug, dialed-in fit under you, all but eliminating cold butt syndrome and letting you take advantage of all the down underneath you. The third pro of this quilt is that it's lighter. Due to the half-stuffed foot end and tapering cut of this quilt, they were able to save quite a bit of weight over most traditional underquilts. Most underquilts are rectangle, while the Uprising tapers towards the foot end to save weight. Now, the Uprising Underquilt isn't perfect for everybody. There are a few cons that you might want to consider when looking into underquilts. The first con you might want to consider is that there's just more tinkering with this underquilt. There are 4 suspension points instead of 2 on a traditional underquilt, so there's just more tinkering that needs to happen to get that dialed-in fit. So this quilt may be better for someone that has a lot of experience with hammocks and underquilts and not somebody that's new to the game. The second con with this quilt that you may want to consider is that there's just more to think about. The half-stuffed foot box makes you plan ahead for the temperatures you are likely to see. If you're expecting colder temperatures and you are worried about your feet, make sure to bring along some warmer socks, down booties, or a butt pad to use as extra insulation. And the last con you may want to consider with the Uprising Underquilt is that it's really not a 4-season quilt, in my opinion. In winter or even late fall where you are seeing temperatures below freezing, I want just as much insulation around my feet, if not more, than I want around my torso due to your extremities typically getting colder than your core in colder temps. Overall, I think Enlightened Equipment did a great job with this quilt. They showed a lot of ingenuity and thought with the additional suspension points that really help you dial in the fit, keeps it more snug, keeps it more secure, and just makes it a better underquilt. They didn't try to reinvent the wheel, they just put a better set of tires on it. That's going to do it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Juice